Somos familia.
So, hi Andres.
Hi.
So, you said during your talk that you were born into danza. How was that for you growing up?
Well, it was a beautiful experience to always have had a community. There were times, in the early days of danza when I was a kid, it wasn't always so cool and popular, right? So like when we danced at my school and like in elementary school, I was like, why do we have to dance at my school and stuff like that? But I will say that in terms of growing up as a danzante, my parents always had a nice balance in terms of. He was filming us for a record. All right, we'll come back. We were doing an interview. Sorry.
So tell us why, Dina, why is dance been such a big part of your life?
Why it's been a big part of my life?
Yes.
Because I had the consciousness of being an indigenous person when I was 8 years old. When I was a very young girl, I realized that I was Mexican and Mexicans were Aztecs, and oh my God, I'm an Aztec. Oh my God, I'm native. What? When I was 8. And so I started wearing my huipiles and my blusas and my trenzas when I was 8, and I just kept looking for it. It kept calling me until I found Dr. Yolanda Broles Gonzalez at UCSB, and she brought in Andres Segura, and I got to hear him talk. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and I got to record him, and I kept like, oh my gosh, like me llamó. So from a very young age, I realized this was mine.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't grow up in it. My family made fun of me, but your family, how did they support?
Yeah, so I would say the rest of my family was always supportive. They were just like, oh, that's the thing they do, because my cousins danced for a little while and then they didn't really dance much longer. Some of my cousins on my dad's side. Some of my cousins on my mom's side, they live far away, so there was never that. But I would say that I was lucky in that I had a very healthy relationship with danza as a kid, because my mom balanced my dad in terms of saying, no, the kids need to do these other things, right? So I got to do some sports. I did swimming. I got to do other activities on school, so I didn't resent the danza for keeping me from doing other stuff, right? And I know that that's not always easy with a lot of kids. But I will say danza was also different when I was little.
Yeah.
Like, when I was a kid, we had like 4 ceremonies, big ceremonies a year, right? Or 5, maybe 6. We would do our little ones and we would travel to a few, but there weren't as many.
Right.
And now I think about my son, I'm dragging him to all these ceremonies, and it's like every weekend.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it's a different experience, but I sometimes, people have that experience of being called to the danza, and I think even those of us who are born and raised in the danza, we still have that experience, because some of us stick with it and love it, and some of us are like, yeah, I'll go support, but they're not really into it, right? And so we still, even though we're born into it, and we feel like we maybe don't have a choice, we still go through that experience of getting called to the danza. And so,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the importance of danza in social justice movements? You could ask a question if you want. Because in movimiento, it's always been part of the movimiento. In the background, you've always seen danza.
Well, you already asked it, so let him answer. You already asked it, so let him.
Oh, no, because I'm not going to be on camera.
Oh.
You have the
Oh my
microphone,
God.
so no one knows what I just asked.
Oh, okay. So, what is the importance of social justice in danza?
Yeah, I think in Mexico, there has been a sort of tension in that danza has always been a form of resistance, but for many it has been purely a spiritual/religious, expression, right? But there have been those moments when the danza has been a part of a type of social justice movement. But that's a very different experience than what has been the danza trajectory here in the United States. Because from the outset, when it comes at the height of that first wave of the Chicano movement, right? And that's, the community was galvanized, was understanding its own indigeneity for the first time in a political way, as a way of resisting, systemic racism and dispossession and oppression and all these different, and demanding self-determination and social justice, or fighting for self-determination and demanding social justice. And the danza, I think, has been intertwined with that philosophy for many of us. Not for everybody, maybe in the danza more recently.
Right, and here in the United States. Because in Mexico, danza is very different culturally, than it is here in the United States. And like right now, I'm trying to wrap my head around that difference. Because I have the Capitan General that lives in my home, and he views danza very differently from the way Chicanos view danza. And so I feel like I'm always trying to interpret for him that like we've been through the Chicano movement, we've lived the Chicano movement. My dad was a brown beret. My mom watched the bank burn down at UCSB. I was a child when all that happened. And so it's a very different point of view from someone who crossed the border as an adult, as a danzante, and they see it as their spiritual tradition and that they have no choice and they're moving it forward, but they look at it more like an obligation to from one family or a relationship, a compadrasco, comadrasco, and more of a religion, whereas we look at it more as a social movement. So I'm trying to figure out how to negotiate those differences too.
I think it's both, right? And I think the way that I make it work, because when I'm in those spaces in Mexico or even here, you know, like that next wave of danza that really picks up in the 2000s with a lot more recent immigration to the United States, that danza is more in that frame of thinking, right? Of like the imagen, and we have these obligaciones to our these promesas that we've made, which I also understand and respect, but without necessarily always thinking about like the political context that we're living in. But my dad always says like, and actually Angelica in our mesa down in San Diego, she said, pues yo soy mexicana, pero mis hijos van a ser chicanos. And so she understood that, they're going to have a different perspective. She understands that her children are going to have a different perspective about what the danza is and what it means to them. Because it's not about centuries or generations of dancing in this one place, in this one way. It's about claiming space. It's about claiming that we're here and that we're indigenous and we're not going anywhere. And that the danza, the spirituality does, you know, it's open for so much, right? You can be completely like atheist, agnostic, very religious, very spiritual, but not religious. Like it's open for all of that. But what it has in common is that it gives us that spiritual resilience to keep fighting, to keep going in this world of racism, systemic oppression, right? And I remember when I was like 19, and we went to Guanajuato, and we're talking to some jefes, and my dad was telling them, and then there's a ceremony that we go to for Cuauhtemoc, and they're like, and then one of our ceremonies is Chicano Park Day, and they're like what?
What is that?
And so then we're trying to explain, understand that those symbols of resistance, like Cuauhtemoc, those moments of self-determination like Chicano Park, those are sacred to us over here, right?
Yeah, because we grew up under that oppression. We grew up under, if you're a Mexicano, you're going to be discriminated against, that you're expected to work in the field, you're expected to be the maids and the gardeners and nothing else. And when people break out of that cycle of being in that class of labor, and then you celebrate the fact that you have a little bit more, even though it is a commodification of our resources, but still the fact that you're not living in abject poverty and being controlled by someone else, it's a source of pride. And you know, I just hope that we don't lose, you know, the essence of who we are to that.
And I think that's something that, I mean, there's groups that we hold strong to our like social justice aspect. I mean, we have a picture right there, my mom at the border. You see the barbed wire and everything. We do protests at the border, we do marches, like that is central to what it is that we do. Lately, we've been a little bit more careful because of what the impacts of what that means for the rest of our community.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, but that's always been an important part of how we see ourselves as danzantes, at least for us. And I think this moment that we're living in is actually, I mean, we'll only see in the future, but this moment that we're living in, we'll see what kind of effect that has on the current sort of like, for lack of a better word, mainstream of danza in the U.S. That has kind of moved away from those movimiento roots a bit. And see, because I think it's like pulling it back. Right?
It is because when I saw that they were dancing in Minnesota in the ice and snow during the protests in Minnesota, before these
Yeah.
tragedies happened, but they were part of it.
Yeah.
I think Susana was
Yeah, and
leading
Susana
the way.
has a very, from what I understand, very much a like movimiento mentality when it comes to like resistance and organizing protests. Yeah, and so I think, yeah, even in LA and like, because LA is like, we're over in San Diego, kind of like the small groups,
Yeah.
and then LA is like all these groups
I know,
and
but
everything.
like Jaime Ayala, he won't do any.
Yeah.
He won't do any of that. So
And so you're starting to see, like, even in Mexico, though, like recently, a moment that reminded me of what we do over here was the barrio de San Francisquito.
oh, where is that?
Because that barrio San Francisquito is the barrio across the way in Querétaro, where all the Danzantes live.
Oh, okay.
So that,
Querétaro?
in Querétaro. So all the Danzantes, like some of the ones over there, their descendants live in live in the barrio. So when you go for Querétaro for the fiesta, all of the velaciones are in that barrio, right? Like you're just walking down a block and there's a velacion over there and one over there and one over there.
my
right?
gosh.
There's so many danzantes. It's the barrio de danzantes. But because of how much Querétaro has grown, that barrio is now, like many of our barrios here, in the middle of the city, that's rapidly gentrifying. So they're having very parallel experiences where, like, all around that very working class, humble community that's been there since
Time immemorial.
time immemorial, right?
Oh my gosh.
They have been surrounded by, and there was a moment where like the city planners were gonna like basically do what's happening to Chicano Park, right? Use some form of what is that, eminent domain to say, okay, we're buying this out, we're gonna redevelop this area, and you guys are gonna be moving out to
No way.
wherever. So a number of the danza groups started dancing in protest and marching with banners saying urban indigenous resistance, and I was like, this feels very familiar for me for what happens here, right? Not over there in Mexico, but here. So there are those parallels, and I think, you know, since the Mexican Revolution, danza moved away from that rebellion aspect of it.
Yeah.
But prior to the revolution, the Cristiada, the revolution,
Well-
the French, all those were endless battles that danzantes were constantly in
yeah,
battles.
because apparently even before the colonization, the conquest, danzantes were the people of service.
Yeah.
We were the people who cleaned the streets, who swept the
yeah.
streets, who kept everything. And the regular poblacion no eran danzantes. They only got to dance once a year.
Yeah.
But the people, they were the ones the engineers,
Yeah.
the keepers of the canals and the waters and like the Xcoco, as big as it was, they were able to live there and grow food there, and kind of the Españoles didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So it's
So I think in social justice and resistance, cultural resistance, those are all like intertwined with the danza
Yes.
since time immemorial.
Yes.
But I think it gets like kind of overlooked in Mexico a lot of times
Yes.
because I mean,
Well, there's still a lot of discrimination against
There's so
people,
much discrimination against danzantes.
and in people who are indigenous.
Indigenous, yeah.
Que si los ven con huaraches,
Yeah.
they're all into, the middle class wants to buy designer everything.
everything from the U.S. or
And
for
motorcycles, and yeah.
Europe and so like, yeah, it's an interesting piece, but I think there will always be that connection in the U.S. at
Yeah.
least between social justice movements and self-determination and resistance, indigenous resistance, Chicano resistance, right? And I use the term Chicano like,
I'm a Chicana, so
Yeah.
I get it.
yeah, but I mean like to clarify, because sometimes people are like think that's like just a way of saying Mexican American, but
No.
as a way of decolonizing even those borders,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's it's another identity altogether,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so.
yeah.
So that type of resistance is very much, for me, a central part of la danza,
Yeah.
at least the way we do it here in the U.S. And I think it has those parallels in Mexico, even if, again, a lot of times it's kind of
Yeah.
not practiced in the daily practice because they're busy with all their compromisos y
Yeah.
obligaciones.
Oh my gosh.
But I don't think it's going anywhere. I think, if anything, as we're
gonna
seeing
grow.
this moment, it's going to grow, because in the way that our communities were galvanized in the 60s and 70s,
They're being galvanized now.
we were galvanized in the 90s
Yeah.
around the anniversary
Isn't-
around
Well, even remember the English only?
yeah, exactly,
yeah.
the anniversary of
Yes.
Columbus and all the props, 187,
Yes,
220,
yes.
right? All those.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, and
I
then
remember
now
that.
again, and so this is
187.
just like
It
it's like a
recycles.
reminder. Okay,
Yeah.
we kind of let our guard down. We have to keep, you know, in the struggle.
yeah.
And the danza gives us that strength to keep going, that resilience, that spiritual resilience, to know who we are, where we come from, that we're grounded in this continent, and that our peoples, because like me, like I don't claim any indigenous nation, because I know that probably it's like all over, right? Like so many, like my mom's family is from Nuevo Mexico, but also Guanajuato. My dad's family is from Michoacan, but also Hidalgo, but also Mexico City. Like I'm a
you're purepecha.
yeah, right. So for me, that's like the danza. Even like one of the things I like to think about is the way the danza. We look at all those nations whose traditions came together in that map over there to give us the danza, and that's like an example of different ways of thinking about indigeneity. There is a tribal indigeneity, and that's a beauty that I don't have access to, and I respect. And then there's also a type of indigeneity where, like, well, cultural. I've been disconnected to a particular indigenous community, but I know that I have indigenous heritage, and I know that I'm connected to this continent, and I reject the white supremacy that has come like from systems like that casta system that we also included in the exhibit, right? And my own privileges that come with having the ojos claros, right?
We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
In our personal lives, we've talked about that before.
And so I think that consciousness.
But that might come from still indigeneity, no?
I mean, who knows? But yeah, so you know. Yeah, I don't even know where I was going at this point. I get lost in my thoughts over here, but
have been doing wonderful.
He's gonna edit it. We're gonna sound great.
Closing statements, Dina. Closing statements.
Well, I think we need to work on more communication between the Chicanos and the Mexicanos in danza, honestly, because I feel like sometimes there's some misunderstandings, and I think it comes through education and having more convivios and just hanging out with each other and really asking each other questions and trying to understand, because like the last time I went to the Romeria for the Virgen de Zapopan, and if I would have been Lakota, I would have been horrified, but I was just like, oh, because they have this idea that indigenous people are Plains Indians, and so you know the sonajeros wear like the bonnet and the faux suede fringe, and I'm like, So, and then, you know, when we went to that velación, someone were singing Sundance songs, and they were singing bear songs. I'm like, no, the bear's asleep. And so I think we really need to, like, I don't know, I'm sorry, but we need to educate each other and respect the different protocols. Because I think that a lot of people don't understand there are protocols. Both North American natives, Mexican natives, danzas, velaciones, peyote ceremonies, you know, Sundance, Bear Dance, Ghost Dance, and all those, every single one of those ceremonies has their own protocols, their own songs, their own clothing, their own regalia. And we don't know. And we need to ask, and we need to share, and not be jealous with it, but also demand respect.
Let's close it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, that was.